Yeah, I can hear that. It's really low, though. Can we go any higher? I guess I could go like this.
From KGW News, this is Decision 2018, Election Night.
And welcome to our coverage of the 2018 midterm elections here on KGW.com and on KGW's Facebook page. We're glad to have you with us tonight. It's an exciting night. I'm Laurel Porter along with our political analyst, Len Bergstein. Thanks for being here. You and I have covered a lot of elections, and this one is really exciting. You know, typically Americans aren't really that overly enthusiastic about midterm elections compared to presidential elections, but this year is different both on the national level and the local level. People are energized, Len.
It's really been quite amazing. I mean, everybody's been just surprised, I think, at the voter turnout, which is the measurement of what the enthusiasm is. Both sides have been enthusiastic during this election. The national race obviously got big significance in terms of the way the government's going to run. Referendum on the president, and sense about whether the Democrats can regain their footing and their relevance in terms of the way government stands. Everybody getting ready for 2020. It's hard to believe, but we're just 700 days away from 2020.
I think people at home are like, wait a minute, we're just finishing these political ads. They can't wait for them to be over. You know, people were lined up. We've seen video on NBC News of people lined up around the block at polling places. Of course, our vote by mail system, it's not even 8 o'clock yet, so people are still turning in their ballots. There are lines of cars with different ballot drop-off boxes, which is, I think,
numbers are
really
great.
exciting to see.
It is very
You
exciting.
know, President Trump said this election is about him. And former Vice President Biden said this is the most important election of his lifetime. How would you define this election?
Well, both of those are 100% true, I think. It really is, everything in the Trump administration is about him, and probably as people have been watching the national news, Trump has defied his own advisors and said, I'm going to go out and run this kind of campaign the way I want to. I'm going to take these issues, I'm going to make the elections all mine, and so it's going to be a referendum on me as the president. And he seems, as we look at the results, seems to have made that case. Biden is correct also. This is a terribly important race for a number of reasons, both in terms of who actually governs, but also what is the way you govern? What's fair game in terms of how you energize and your own base, and how do you talk to the entire, American people? The notion that you can run the government on the kind of stuff that the president has been, trotting out there at his, at his rallies, it brings a lot of people up short. Oregon's got some real sense of optimism. And so the thing that you said about the turnout, which is so great, I think it underscores the fact that Oregon's got one of these great voter systems which encourages participation.
And we're celebrating 20 years this election.
Exactly. And so what you've got is you've got vote by mail, as you said. You've got easy to register, the motor voter idea.
Which is only about 2 years old.
Oh, pretty wink of the eye. And then we have a culture that is against voter suppression. We don't have any, thank God, none of the kinds of stories that are going on in places like Georgia and some other states where people are, their game plan is to keep some people away from the polls. So we have a lot going for us, and it's playing itself out in one of these really great elections.
The big race that everybody's watching, of course, is the governor's race between Democrat Kate Brown, looking for her first four-year term, and also between Republican Knute Buehler. And we have Kylie Bosch, she's going to be covering this for us tonight. He's at Kate Brown's campaign at the Hilton downtown Portland. So let's find out from Kyle. How's it going down there? What's the mood there, Kyle?
Laurel, certainly an exciting night, especially for Democrats here at the Democratic Party headquarters here in the Hilton in downtown Portland. They're watching national returns coming in now, and obviously a lot of enthusiasm here. But as you've mentioned, the real focus for a lot of these Democrats will be watching the governor's race as incumbent Kate Brown looking to hold on to her position. This really is a tight race, as pollsters have described it as a toss-up. The governor is taking nothing for granted. In fact, she's been on the campaign trail, including this afternoon. We caught up with her earlier today when she was at Portland State University. In fact, the past 2 days she's been on college campuses around the state. Portland State in downtown Portland today, and also the University of Oregon yesterday, courting young voters, which is interesting. Obviously, her campaign sees this as an important aspect of the campaign and looking for these younger voters, but also the Democratic base, which is so critical to this campaign. They're hoping to draw those voters and retain those voters as well. It's very important for her campaign. Governor Brown says she will be watching the results coming in, typically in a private setting. She anticipates some good hard numbers coming in about 9 o'clock tonight. At that point, she'll really have a sense of where things stand statewide, nationally, but most importantly in the governor's race. This has been a hotly contested, a close race, and an expensive race. The most expensive governor's race that we've ever seen in the state of Oregon, and you've probably seen all the political ads, some of them quite dark and nasty. As a result, we've got a very close contest between the Republican Knute Buehler and the incumbent Kate Brown. Back to you.
Thank you, Kyle. We'll be checking back with you throughout the evening. The polls have shown always that Kate Brown's ahead. I don't think I've ever seen a poll that showed Knute Buehler ahead, but she's not been ahead by a lot. I think the aggregate poll is about 3.6 points for her, 3 points in the latest Hoffman Research poll. So, and a lot of people don't have a lot of faith in polls lately. I remember the Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton race. The primary showed that Hillary Clinton was supposedly going to win by 15 points, and then Bernie Sanders won by several points. So a lot could happen tonight. The polls might not be right. I know the Buehler campaign's hoping that. What's your assessment of the governor's race?
Well, first of all, let's put it in historical context a little bit anyway. Most of the governor's races are within 4 or 5 points. I mean, you have to go back to Kitzhaber versus Sizemore to see somebody, Kitzhaber winning by 20, 30 points. Most of them are really kind of paper thin. And, you know, Kitzhaber himself beat Chris Dudley by under 2 percentage points. So a big victory for Kate Brown, you could say, would be 4 to 6 points, and that would be, so people would go, maybe they would look again at what they thought about the race. If she wins, you'd have to say that Buehler squandered an opportunity. I mean, she was, her performance rating wasn't great. There are those kinds of polls that indicate whether or not people feel we're headed in the right direction, wrong direction, and they said well, the state was going in the wrong direction. So she was ripe to be kind of bumped off with a strong challenge. But somehow, during the midst of the campaign, the attempt to make the Buehler campaign, which was predicated on who do you blame and blaming the governor for your problems, turned into a referendum on Buehler himself on the who do you trust kind of question, which Kate Brown's campaign was able to effectively say.
She says she kept saying that he doesn't reflect Oregonians' values.
I think that's right, and I think people thought that by the end of the campaign, came away feeling that she did share their values and that they trusted her to do things. On top of that, the Democrats have got a very strong institutional base of support for her. So her allies, progressives, women, people of color, communities of color, came out in droves and organized themselves around coalitions that really, I think, fed into her strength in her campaign. They not only delivered impressive wins, as I think we'll see tonight on some ballot measures, but they also supported her and gave her confidence and momentum. If she wins this race, she'll be coming out of this with a lot of confidence.
It's still an if. I know that Knute Buehler's campaign's really, really optimistic. And they've tried to get their message out and really, you've talked a lot about status quo and change. Yeah. I think both campaigns have tried to make the other look like the status quo. Like Knute Buehler is saying Kate Brown's part of a status quo, 30 plus years of Democratic leadership. And she's saying Knute Buehler's part of a status quo, kind of connecting him with Donald Trump. And that's been one of the things a problem that he's had to have is try to distance himself from Donald Trump, which a lot of the Republican candidates across the country have done. Do you think that is going to hinder him tonight?
All of those things you just said are exactly right. They were good characterizations of this race. They did raise and spend a lot of money, as Kyle said, but they spent it to define the other candidate. In other words, I don't think Kate Brown spent a lot of time saying, here's who I am and here's what I'm all about. And Knute Buehler didn't spend, they spent all their time trying to characterize and give the voters a perception of who the other person was. And in that battle between who do you blame? Do you blame the governor for all of the problems that we've got, for the inability to kind of get things going on areas of education and what have you, which Buehler picked as one of the kind of hallmarks of his campaign. Again, the battle of that message campaign was waged, and I think when we see the results of this election, we'll see that the Kate Brown message, which is the do you trust him? Do you think you know him? Has he flipped on a couple of issues to you, was the message that really kind of resonated with the voters, and that's the reason I think that the outcome will be what it is.
Well, we'll revisit the governor's race in a little bit. Let's talk about some of the other important races. And we should say that NBC has called the House for the Democrats, that they will take majority control of the House. So they have flipped at least 23 seats. And one of the races that was important was in Washington. There were 3 important congressional races there for the Democrats, one of them being in Southwest Washington, but now that one apparently won't be pivotal, although still very important. Yeah, sure. And that's the one between Jaime Herrera Butler and Carolyn Long. What do you make of that race?
Well, it played itself out as though it was a national referendum, kind of a playbook from a whole bunch of different congressional races that we watched. Some of them have been called, and as you said, the House seems to have shifted over in control to give us a divided government for a divided country. It's really kind of ironic, I imagine, that happens. In the case of the 3rd Congressional District, Butler tried to defend her position on a number of things, and Long found the issue of health care to be the most salient argument that she had.
Which is what I saw. NBC is saying that that is the most important issue to all of Americans is health care.
Exactly. The president tried to make immigration the most important thing, but I think that's right. The Democrats latched onto health care and the whole question of pre-existing conditions. I think it's a sense that the public, even though the things seem to be going a little bit well for people right now, they are still insecure about what happens to you if you get caught up in a healthcare crisis. And so they're very, very susceptible to that argument that, in fact, in this case, Herrera Butler didn't care as much about protecting healthcare, particularly in pre-existing conditions. So long kind of grasped it and just drove it home. And Butler was effective, I think, in a lot of ways in kind of parlaying that away. You know, that's been the challenge of the race.
Well, one of the races I know you're really excited about watching is this historic Portland City Council race. Competitive and historic between Loretta Smith and JoAnn Hardesty. And we have our Mike Benner is covering that for us. So let's check in with Mike and find out what's going on here with JoAnn Hardesty.
Yeah, hey there. We're having a hard time hearing you, but I can tell you that right now we're at Holocene in southeast Portland. This is where JoAnn Hardesty will be gathering with her supporters later this evening. What an exciting night, regardless of who wins. This will be the first time ever that a black woman has been elected to Portland City Council. This is coming on the 50th anniversary of the first time ever that a black woman was elected to Congress. We're talking about Shirley Chisholm of New York back in 1968. But here in Portland, it is all about Loretta Smith and JoAnn Hardesty tonight. Hardesty is a Maryland native, a veteran of the Navy. She used to be an Oregon State rep, as well as a president of the local chapter of the NAACP. She'll be tackling issues, should she win, such as police reform and housing. Again, she is up against Loretta Smith, someone who made her name on the Multnomah County Commission. She'll be tackling housing and homelessness, as well as transportation. Now, earlier this evening, we had a chance to catch up with Marcus Mundy of the Coalition of Communities of Color. He talked about the significance of this race. I want you to take a listen.
We have been historically forgotten about, historically underrepresented. So to see one of these two women, both of whom I know, both of whom I respect, both of whom I've worked with, ascend to this role, I'm excited, both for the community, because they'll bring a different lens to how they go about their business, but also I'm excited for Portland.
And there you have it. That is Marcus Mundy of the Coalition of Communities of Color. Here's something else to keep in mind with also making this a very exciting night. Regardless of who wins, this will be the first time ever that there are more women than men on Portland City Council. The winner of this race, of course, will be taking Dan Saltzman's seat and be joining Chloe Udaley and Amanda Fritz, as well as Nick Fish. So a very exciting night on many levels. We'll be following the race all evening. For now, though, I'll send it back to you in the KGW studios.
Thank you, Mike. It is really exciting. Let's talk about this race a little bit, about the history it's making, and also that it's going to make the City Council a majority of women for the first time ever. So how does this change the dynamic of the Portland City Council?
Well, it makes the question of where 3 votes come from really being uppermost in probably everybody's mind. Both the mayor and Nick Fish and Chloe Udaley, the 3 commissioners, the mayor and 2 commissioners that are there now, are going to try and figure out how do you find 3 votes on this shifting council. It's a change in chemistry. These are different people. They have different personalities than Dan Saltzman. Each of them are very strong in their own right. They've been known not to always get along with the establishment or the leader of a council or a group. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of work their way onto a very small council that works best when the people kind of get along. So what's happened so far? JoAnn Hardesty came out with a very aggressive campaign and won by a large amount during the primary.
25 points,
exactly.
I think, right?
And it's not usual that you're able to kind of come back from that deficit, except for the fact that the electorate in a general is very different than the electorate in a primary. There's more voters. They kind of change in complexion. They're a little bit more conservative. And Loretta Smith has run her campaign as though she was trying to get into the middle of a moderate constituency. And so she may, in fact, be the comeback kid. We don't, if she comes back, it'll be an amazing comeback.
The polls show it's even, I think.
Yeah, it's really tightened up. And this is not unusual for her either, because in her last race for the county commission against a woman by the name of Carol Collymore, Loretta was down, I think, by 18 or 20 points in that race too, and she kind of came back in that one to win to be elected. So it's not as if she hasn't run from behind and run well. I think JoAnn has been advantaged by the fact that there is a very strong progressive and center-left or left element in the community that really wants to see someone kind of challenge the status quo. And so she has been able to kind of surf on that move and also been a kind of a leader of that. So they're two different people, two different styles, and they will change both the chemistry and the mathematics of the city council.
Well, it's going to be a nail biter, I think. It's going to be really exciting to see.
I think so. I think you're right. I think people who have turned away from this race, kind of may have turned away too quickly. I think that I think it's going to come down to the wire, as you said, and it ties us in a very magical way, I think, with some of the races that are going on around the country. So the Florida race for governor, again, first African American man who would win, and then in Georgia, where Stacey Abrams would be the first woman African American to win as governor. There's something both wonderful and a little bit off-putting, I'm sure, to people. And Marcus Mundy kind of captured it a little bit. We're talking about 2018.
What's taking so long to have the first female black governor, which we don't know if that's going to happen or not. That could end up in a recount. I want to let folks know that the polls ballots will be due back by 8 o'clock, not exactly the polls here, but we only have several more minutes until the first numbers start coming in, so we'll bring those to you as soon as we have those. I want to revisit the governor's race right now. We have our Maggie Vespa covering the Knute Buehler campaign at the Sentinel Hotel in downtown Portland, so let's check in with Maggie and see what's going on there. Maggie?
Yeah, Laurel, that's right. Good evening. You just said that those polls are due in around 8 o'clock, and that's what this speech is right here behind me. We're not going to go at it live. It just wrapped up, but that was basically representative of the campaign stepping up there and saying, just hang on until 8. At 8 o'clock, everybody there saying at this party, which I'll step out of the way and show it to you, is going to start seeing those early returns come back. Also, Joe spoke with the chair for the Oregon GOP and asked him about the polls in this race, which, as we know, have been tight and steady, with Knute Buehler trailing incumbent Kate Brown by about 3 to 5 points at any given time. And they kind of went, polls really aren't, relevant in this race, because they said what they're doing from their standpoint is that they're polling likely voters. And this campaign is really banking on the independent voters, the undecided voters, and the voters that they hope, even if sort of secretly among their friends and family, are Democrats who are frustrated with incumbent Governor Kate Brown. So that's kind of been their strategy here. They just talked a lot about national races, the results that are coming in. I heard the name Ted Cruz, who obviously has retained his Senate seat down in Texas, and they're kind of really banking on the energy and riding that wave from the victories they know are coming in across the country from the GOP. But again, they just said, hey, hang on for 10 more minutes, hang on for 12 to 15 more minutes. We're going to start seeing those results. We have giant TVs in this room. They're treating this like a party for now. They're remaining optimistic, and they told me, based on the campaign that Knute Buehler ran, and based on the fact that those polls are so close, which is historic in the state of Oregon, they think they have a really good shot at, again, Knute Buehler becoming the first Republican governor in the state of Oregon in more than 30 years. So we're going to stay here at the Sentinel Hotel downtown, keep bringing you updates as they come. For now, indeed, it is a party. Guys, back to you.
Thank you, Maggie. And let's talk about that a little bit, Len, because Oregon is a reliably blue state. I mean, we have very few Republicans in office besides Greg Walden and Dennis Richardson, and yet the race is close. That it seems that Knute Buehler's message has gotten across to keep it that close.
Well, he was able to get a message out early. He had lots of money, was able to do it, and was able to attack and kind of undermine the public's confidence in Kate Brown. There were things that he could easily attack, and he was basically up on the air. Both he and his allied kind of committees, independent expenditure committees, really made a concerted effort to attack in the early parts of the campaign. That had a big negative impact on Kate Brown, and she was in many ways unresponsive in terms of the early part of the campaign, end of the summer, and so on and so forth. Once again, she put a campaign on and really poured money into her media campaign, and then also got a ground game going that was pretty impressive. I think the thing sorted out into the natural hydraulics of the Oregon blue state. There's just so much you can do. I know they're trying to kind of like find the path to victory here, kind of on election night here, but there's just so much you can do, and the Democrats have got so much of an advantage, and they turn out at such high numbers.
About 250,000 voter registration edge the Democrats have over the Republicans.
That's right, and normally the Republicans turn out more even in terms of their percentage, but it's the gross numbers of Democrats who show up, and then it's the fight for the independents. I think the job that Kate Brown did was, in terms of her campaign, when it's all examined, was pretty good. She protected what she had to protect, which is she protected women in terms of political sense. It was very clear, I think, by the ending arguments in the campaign that, in fact, if you were a woman, if you were pro-choice, in favor of reproductive rights, you knew that Kate Brown was on your side and she was your champion. So it was kind of it wasn't a kind of a question at that point. There were other groups that she was able to speak to and defend and kind of keep in her pack, and Buehler wasn't able to split them out. You have to kind of, it's probably early in the evening to kind of analyze this as though it's a done deal, but you have to wonder whether the Republicans have got to rethink what their message is. They can't run as a better Democrat than Kate Brown.
Well, he really was trying to take a page out of other governors that are in blue states that are Republican, like Massachusetts and Maryland, and taking some of those moderate positions, but also saying that they owe it to the taxpayers to make sure that government runs effectively. And he really, took her on PERS, on the $22 billion unfunded liability. What are we going to do about that to keep the state solvent? And he went after her on the foster care system that's been underfunded and overwhelmed, also on the education system that a lot of people are concerned about with the lower graduation rate. So he did try to find some areas that he could attack on, but that also take those moderate positions like the governors in Maryland and Massachusetts have, where they have very high approval ratings in a state like Maryland and Massachusetts that have low Trump approval ratings. So has they been somewhat successful there?
I think you did a good job at Straight Talk to give him an opportunity to kind of, really kind of push him on it, press him on it, but allow him to kind of make that case. I guess the argument that I'm trying to make here is that you just can't say that I'm that I'm a better Democrat than the sitting governor who's a Democrat. You just can't fight on the progressive ground that she's got and think that you're going to be able to win when you've got somebody like Kate Brown, who really has got a long track record and pretty strong groups behind her that think that she has in fact been their champion. So I think there was an argument that he had, exactly the one you were telling me. It should have been critical. It should have been and maybe more populist. He maybe should have, rather than taking a page out of the Maryland governor's race, he maybe should have embraced a little bit of the Trump populism. He maybe should have, the thing you were just saying about, I'm the protector of your pocketbook. I'm going to make sure that I get rid of waste in government and get rid of these bloated bureaucracies. If he had been a little bit more populist and a little bit less kind of progressive, I think he probably would have had a more salient message and would have been less able for Kate to kind of just defend her ground.
And we'll see what the numbers show. They're going to be coming out. I'm looking over at the clock here. Almost 8 o'clock, just about a minute to go, and we'll get some first numbers to share with you. Let's talk about all the money in politics, because I'm sure you hear this everywhere I go. People are so tired of all the ads, and they haven't necessarily, that you and I have talked about this, and I've talked to other political insiders, that haven't necessarily been more negative than in previous elections, but the sheer volume of ads. And we've been bombarded 24/7. And this has been the most expensive governor's race in state history. I guess we want to go to Maggie. She has something else from Knute Buehler's campaign. Good. So we'll revisit this topic on money and talk to Maggie right now. Maggie.
Yeah, hey you guys, good evening. I don't know if you noticed, but they just basically turned on KGW when I said that they were getting ready to watch the results come in, which is, obviously fine by us. I do want to point out that we've had a couple people on social media asking if Knute Buehler is going to be here at this party, going to be here talking to reporters. And the campaign at this point has told us that he's actually spending the evening with his family. We do expect that he is going to be making a speech at some point, and he is going to be doing that after obviously some results come in and they sort of know what the situation is, but they are being very measured. They say they're optimistic, but they are being measured as this night progresses. They don't want him answering questions with reporters. They don't want him getting asked, sort of how he feels about the latest poll results. He did talk to reporters earlier today, but they basically told us tonight is a night where he wants to stay with his family. He wants to just kind of absorb the results as they come in, and then they want that speech, they told me, quote, to speak for itself. Once again, they're watching the results come in live. State Representative Buehler in the governor's race is standing by, we're told, likely in this building, in the Sentinel Hotel with his family. We expect him here within the next couple of hours. But again, we have not seen him tonight, and we're told he will not be speaking to reporters. Guys, back to you.
Thank you, Maggie. Back here with Len Bergstein, waiting for the first numbers to come in. It's just past 8 o'clock, so your ballots were due back. No more ballots accepted. It was pretty exciting to have the election arrive now, this midterm we've been looking forward to for so many months.
Really, particularly as long, and it's been sweeping across the country, heading our way. So in fact, we've been watching these results in other parts of the country, watching the government kind of divide itself out now. It looks like the Republicans keep the Senate and the Democrats take over the House, and what that means for the future. And of course, our big race is the one we've been talking about.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the money, because we were talking about, before we went to Maggie, about all the spending, $26 million between the two of them, mostly spent on ads. And now we're hearing about campaign finance reform, because Kate Brown was endorsed by Patrick Starnes, the independent candidate who dropped out through his support to Kate Brown. And now in the last couple of days, all of a sudden, she's talking about campaign finance reform. It's not something she's talked about, that I've heard her talk about, until Patrick Starnes endorsed her. And it's kind of ironic to be talking about it. I think we have to hold that thought, because we have Earl Blumenauer now. Like, there's so much happening tonight. Earl Blumenauer is talking at the Hilton, so let's check in.
A lot of hard work has been done. We have progress that we can be proud of, but I am here to announce that Democrats will control the House of Representatives. I could not be prouder of what you have done and what we've done around the country, starting immediately after the last election, resolve to resist this reckless Trump administration and move forward to take control of our government back. In your House of Representatives, we will start on a program to rebuild and renew America with hundreds of thousands of family wage jobs. We will hold this reckless administration accountable. We will schedule the committee hearings. We will schedule the witnesses. We will have the subpoena power. We can force them to testify under oath. But it is more than just accountability. It's developing and advancing a progressive vision for our country. You know, we're at halftime. We still have this reckless administration for another 25 months. This is halftime. But tonight, we can announce we have a full Democratic team on the field. And you are going to see the results. We are still chalking up victories. As we move across the country, the results come in. There will be more victories. We're waiting to hear from the state of Washington, California, maybe even Alaska. But know how much I deeply appreciate what you've done on the ground here in Oregon. Defeating grotesque ballot measures, we will win. Re-electing our governor, we will win. And giving people hope for the next chapter in this struggle. Thank you very, very, very much. Thank you.
You were just listening to Oregon Congressman Earl Blumenauer, very excited that the Democrats have taken the House. This will mean a lot for him, and we can talk about that later. But we want to get to some numbers and tell you that there is a final in the Portland City Council race. The Oregonian has called it for JoAnn Hardesty. So she will be the next commissioner. You can see a pretty lopsided vote right now with this number of votes in. She will be the next city commissioner, the first black woman on the city council. Now there will be 3 women on the council, along with Amanda Fritz and Chloe Udaly. What do you think about this, Len?
Well, it's going to be an interesting council. It's, as we talked about earlier, she has a style that she's announced during the campaign that she's not going to just worry about her particular little bureaus. She's going to worry about the entire city. So it'll be interesting to see how she comes to grips with the other members of the council and the mayor in terms of kind of forging an agenda. She's has her finger on the pulse of a lot of the things that are going on that are really exciting in the city right now. I think we'll see the results later on in terms of the Citizens Initiative, in terms of
the green energy
the clean energy one. And she's been instrumental in a bunch of things that have to do with police reform. So I think she won't be a quiet commissioner, and she will, kind of hit the ground running. And it'll be interesting to see how she kind of moves in. It immediately, in my mind, puts the. I know we didn't want to talk about this, but it puts the view onto 2020 already, because people have said, well, are the sitting commissioners going to stay the same? Is Amanda Fritz going to stay there as whatever? And so people will be starting to look at the maybe
and
the
who's
next
up in
opening.
2020?
It's Udaly, Fritz, and the mayor. So and the question in City Hall, it's not a surprise. People are not sure about which one of those, or if any of them, are going to run for re-election or again, which will put the attention on the next set of elections already for City Hall. So the kind of the change that'll occur, that clearly this is a change election for the city, and Hardesty will bring her enormous skills and persuasive and forcefulness to the council. But I think people will start to look at kind of like how, in fact, the city politics are being shaped, whether they're moving dramatically to the left, and whether the next round of city commissioners will move either further to the left, or will they reestablish some sort of balance. So I think while it is an exciting time for the city, it also opens up a lot of questions about how the dynamic of the council is going to work, and what kind of common agenda the city council will have under Mayor Wheeler.
And JoAnn Hardesty is also being very involved in that clean energy, the business tax. So it'll be interesting to see what that does. And you can see we're scrolling now at the bottom of your screen. You can see a lot of the results are coming in, and we will touch on those as we go. We're going to go to Mike Benner now at the JoAnn Hardesty camp to get reaction. Mike Benner.
Hey there, guys. If you ask me a question, I'm not going to answer it because I cannot hear a thing in here. We have Norman Sylvester jamming out behind us, but we are hearing that the Oregonian has called this race in favor of JoAnn Hardesty. But these folks don't necessarily know it yet. As soon as they do, we'll hear a huge roar in this crowd. These are huge supporters of JoAnn Hardesty. Again, trying to get on to the Portland City Council. She will be the first ever black woman on City Council. Not only that, this will make City Council more women than men for the first time ever. So we are seeing history tonight in Portland. Very exciting. This happens to be coming on the 50th anniversary of the first time ever that a black woman was elected to Congress. That was back in 1968, a woman in New York. So very exciting news. I've been speaking with JoAnn Hardesty's representatives. They expect it here at any moment. As soon as we hear from her, we'll try to turn some sound. If not, bring it to you live. But again, exciting times here in Southeast Portland. We're at Holocene, JoAnn Hardesty's party. And again, the Oregonian calling it in her favor. Let's send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Mike Benner with the JoAnn Hardesty camp. We hope to hear from JoAnn Hardesty later on. Let's talk about some of the numbers coming in the governor's race. Kate Brown out to an early lead. Let's check on those latest numbers. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can read it right off my computer here, but you can see it there, 53% to 42%. You can see the total of votes that are in. Do you think these numbers are going to hold, Len? Is it going to get closer as we go through the evening?
I think these numbers are going to hold. It's, you know, that's 1.5 million votes were cast. So many of those were energized voters, young, kind of part of the, I think the coalition that supported Kate Brown really knocked on a whole lot of doors and turned out a lot of voters. And I think that these numbers are, you know, maybe close up a little bit. Remember, we talked about earlier that a landslide for a governor's race is 6 to 8%, and that's a big victory in recent history. But I think that she's going to hold these numbers, and it's going to be an indication not only of her support and the confidence and momentum that she's going to have coming out of this election, but also it's a validation of the hard work that her coalition put together, all of the different groups, including women's organizations, coalitions of color, and others who really bonded together in a fairly impressive coalition to deliver a vote for her.
Let's take a look at some of the other measures. Yeah. Some of them are being called. The grocery tax is being called. So if we can bring up the numbers on the grocery tax, that's number 103. That would have prevented a sales tax on groceries, and I believe that failed. Yeah. You weren't surprised about that. That's 103. Here's the numbers up here. Yes, 59%. So no, 41%. I'm not sure that that is correct the way we have that there. So we'll double check on that. And 102 has also been called. If we can bring up 102, that is the one that goes along with the Metro housing bond that would allow government entities to work with nonprofits. And here is, yes, you aren't surprised about that. That was something that a lot of people thought this one would pass. Measure 102, and no, 43% of 57%. And 104, I think that one has also been called. And 104 is the raising revenues that you need to have 3/5 vote in the legislature to pass any kind of revenue.
I think those numbers are reversed.
We have the mayor talking at the Hilton. We're just getting all kinds of people getting on the action. Let's listen to the mayor.
Reclaim our democratic values. There are so many issues. There are so many issues that are important to Democrats at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. The future starts tonight. Housing in our community is becoming increasingly unaffordable. Tonight at the ballot box, we fight back. Our state's status as a sanctuary state is in jeopardy. Tonight at the ballot box, we fight back. A woman's right to make her own health care decisions, her own reproductive decisions. They're under attack. Tonight at the ballot box, we fight back. Investments in education, investments in health care. They're at risk. They're at risk. And big corporations are instead scheming to protect their own bottom line. But tonight at the ballot box, we fight back. And you know what? And you know what, fellow Democrats? When we work together, when we fight together, you know what happens? We win! We win! Exactly. We win on affordable housing. We win on protecting our sanctuary status. We win on choice. We win on investments around education and on health care. And we win against Donald Trump's divisive agenda. And you know what else? You know what else we win? Tonight, we are going to send back to Mahonia Hall a governor who fights for us. Our governor, Governor Kate Brown. Tonight's our night. Tonight's our night, fellow Democrats, but the work does not here. No, the fight to reclaim our values and take back our country. This is an ongoing fight. So tonight, celebrate, stay out late, yes, be safe, but set your alarm clocks early tomorrow morning, because we have work to do, but we're going to do it from a position of leadership, because tonight at the ballot box, we fought back, and we won. And we won. I want to congratulate all of you, and I want to be the first. I want to be the first in the room to congratulate my new colleague on the Portland City Council, Commissioner-elect JoAnn Hardesty. Commissioner-elect, I look forward to working with you and our colleagues, because we have a lot of work to do at the local level, don't we? And I know as Democrats, you'll work with us to get the job done. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, and congratulations.
Well, Mayor Wheeler
we
on
have another
fire.
Yeah.
Wow, he was enthusiastic, congratulating JoAnn Hardesty. Let's talk about the mayor. I haven't seen him like that for a long time.
This is really a good sign of him, and he really needs to kind of show more of this, his outer voice, as he says, as opposed to his inner voice. I think he's, there's a bunch of the progressive issues that he really does care for. Wheeler is a progressive. He's kind of more conservative and a little bit more reserved personally than maybe some other members of the council, but he really does care a lot about these issues. And housing is one of those issues. He and Nick Fish particularly have formed a very strong team to try and push through these housing measures. I think to a large extent the constitutional amendment, which we'll look at when we get our numbers straight here, and also the measure to for bonding for metro area, in no small part are due, the success of those two are due to Wheeler and Fish combining together to really kind of push that out. I saw a story by the Pew Institute in which there's a number of states that are looking to the bonding power to be able to start doing more to build affordable housing. And I think what Wheeler and Fish are talking about here is trying to build enough of a coalition and a constituency so that in fact our community can move forward and build even more housing. When we go out for another bond next election cycle, to really use this tool to kind of build our way out of the affordable housing crisis. So you're right. The point of it was that I know you want to get to JoAnn. That the mayor really, I think, was trying to demonstrate again how strongly he feels about the progressive challenge he's got ahead of him.
Well, let's listen to JoAnn Hardesty.
I want to say how proud I am of the team that I assembled. I had the dream team. I had people who believed that it was possible to have a different kind of Portland. They were not swayed. They were not swayed by innuendo, certified smart people. They weren't swayed by people saying, but that's just not how you run a campaign for City Hall. believed, once I had that conversation with Dan, that it was time for regular voices to be center at City Hall. It was time for us to know that City Hall should come to you, not for you to have to go downtown, find parking, take the bus, wait for 2 hours for people who are on a city payroll to talk, and then you would have the luxury of 2 to 3 minutes. Now, we have big problems in this city, but I am proud to be joining Commissioner Amanda Fritz and Commissioner Chloe Udeli. And I'm even getting to be joining Mayor, what's his name? Ted Wheeler. And of course, Commissioner Nick Fish. Because I believe, and this is why it was so important for us not to just win, but to get a mandate. It was important because I believe on day one, we get to show what real governance looks like. We get to show what happens when you listen to the people who you're governing. I am so proud of all the incredible 1,900 individual donors, over 32,000 doors we knocked on, over 500 committed volunteers that showed up week after week after week. I am proud to say that this is the Portland I thought it was.
You are listening to JoAnn Hardesty, your newest city commissioner, but we want to let you know big news. The Oregonian has called Kate Brown as the next governor of Oregon. She has won. I know you're not surprised. This is something that you predicted for a while.
Well, it is. It's again, like I said, it's a validation of her ability to kind of stay to a progressive line. Let's face it, both of these were talented and blue chip candidates. So we had the potential of having a really good race, and we had a good race in terms of issues. But
here are the numbers: 50% to 44%.
Okay, so what you've got is a governor who now comes out of this race with a kind of confidence, I think, and momentum to really have a great next and last term in office. She ran a good campaign. Once she kind of straightened herself out after the summer, a little bit kind of rocky times. I think the fall was great. Those people who saw her in the last couple of weeks of the campaign said she was on fire and more confident and more
very
focused,
buoyant,
than ever before. So I think that this was a validation of kind of her record as all the years that she's put in government, and the fact that she, in fact, the people who supported her knew where she stood, and again felt that she shared their values. So large blocks of women, young people, progressives, communities of color, all those, the kind of the new coalition that really I think is kind of driving Oregon's politics and the politics of the city, and JoAnn Hardesty, those folks have got a champion in the governor's office as a result of this election. The Republicans now have got a little bit of a problem. They had one of the best spokespersons they've had.
Now, where do they go from here?
Good question.
Buehler was a good candidate. He put up a really great campaign and fight.
Yeah. Well, I think there's going to be a serious debate inside the Republican Party inside Oregon. I think we'll see the results as they come in, that the Democrats will maintain control of both the state House and the state Senate, maybe even with supermajorities. So that
they only need one more seat in each chamber to get a supermajority,
exactly.
right?
And be able to, they'll control the agenda and drive the agenda for the state, be able to support the governor and what she wants to focus on. Republicans have got to figure out exactly where they can pick their fights. The one nice thing I think about this, I heard a smart person explaining the race, to me about it and said because the battleground often was on the progressive side of the issues. In other words, the governor and Knute Buehler agreed that education is important, agreed that climate change, agreed with a woman's right to choose, and so on and so forth, even though she may have been the more forceful advocate for those things. So there's a broad consensus, and so the question is, can they take that down to the state capitol, to the legislature, trade off perhaps some of the things that need to get done on PERS to solve that problem?
Do you think that we really will see the governor and the legislature tackle PERS? That's something that was really the pet peeve of Knute Buehler. Do you think we'll see any action there?
Oh, I do. I think very clearly. I mean, there's something about your last term in office that rivets your attention when you're a governor. And she clearly wants to solve these problems. She wants to put the state on solid financial
and she doesn't have to worry about re-election again.
Exactly. And there is a strength in terms of the dealing with some of the groups that have been her strongest supporters, public employee unions or whatever. She's going to be able to sit at a different table now with them, or at least sit with a different set of objectives to be able to kind of bring people to a compromise position. I think we're going to see a very strong Kate Brown in this last term in her office.
Because she has said all along the way that public employees should have some skin in the game. So she's sort of been foreshadowing that she does plan to do something. What else do you think we'll see from the legislature if they get a supermajority? And we'll kind of check in on that later if we have a chance. And they have Kate Brown in the governor's office.
Well, the health care issues are going to be important. They have been all across the country, but they're important for Oregon. There's a big deficit in terms of the Oregon health plan that they've got to figure a way to kind of finance that. They've got to continue, I think, with the things that have to do with infrastructure. The housing issue, the city of Portland and the region looks like it's taken a big step forward, but Kate Brown had ambitious goals, and as a governor, I think she's going to tackle that issue in a big way and lead the way forward on that.
How about on homelessness? That's something that Knute Buehler kind of pushed her on that. Do you think she'll step up in that front?
Well, I think she has, and it's a complicated problem. I don't think she's going to solve it with waving a wand, but I think there's a bunch of things that she can put in place. She's got some strong allies who understand that there's got to be supportive housing, there's got to be services as well as more housing, and there's got to be a reduction of some of the red tape that goes with building. We've got to build our way out of this a little bit. So I think she's, first of all, she's got the capabilities to solve the policy problems. Now she's got really a referendum here, a strong support from the voters. Again, she's got strong allies and a focus on a couple of issues, and I think a chance to have a legacy in her last term.
One of the things she positioned herself as is one of the leaders of the resistance against President Trump's on so many fronts, including immigration, women's rights, the environment. Do you continue to see her in that role, really pushing back on President Trump's policies that she thinks don't reflect Oregonians' values?
Clearly, and the answer simply is yes. She will continue to be more forceful. She looks like she's going to have more Democratic allies as governors around the country. Not everyone that I think she probably hoped is going to win, but there's going to be a bunch more Democratic governors, so that she's going to have forcefulness there. I think she's going to have some more AGs, so that she and Ellen Rosenblum, our AG, will be able to be a forceful duo on some of the legal issues. I think that she's going to be a real force. I don't know whether it's going to be just the resistance, because I'm not sure Oregonians want just the resistance. They clearly don't want us to go down the path that is the race baiting and all the rest of that stuff. That's not Oregon's values, and I think she will draw a line in the sand on that. But I think there's going to have to be some sort of progressive things. What's nice, and we can tie some of these things in, there may in fact be an infrastructure agenda that someone like Earl Blumenauer and DeFazio can do. I think both of them will have positive roles in leadership in the Congress.
Let's talk about some of that later on, but we want to go to Maggie Vespa, who's with the Knute Buehler campaign at the Sentinel Hotel downtown, to find out how they're doing there and if Knute Buehler will be making a concession speech. Maggie?
Yeah, Laurel, good evening. So we're here at the Sentinel Hotel. Obviously, we just got the results along with everyone else. I'm joined now by Bill Courier. He's the chair of the Oregon GOP. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Your reaction to what you just learned?
Well, the numbers will continue to close. There's a lot of votes that still need to be counted. Most of those will be coming from counties where Knute is strong. So I think it's going to be a while before we know the final results.
I do want to point out the obvious. We have a stage filling up behind you tonight. Do you know what's happening? Are we getting ready to hear a speech of some sort from him, or what's the deal?
I don't know.
the way they're coming in, the fact that the Oregonian has called it at this point, and the fact that the polls were as close as they were going into tonight. Just your thoughts on where the campaign is and the road leading up to it.
Well, like I said, there's still a lot of votes to count. We're going to be here a while. The counties that have not yet submitted are clearly strong counties for Knute. So I'm prepared to be here a while until we know the result. So.
Gotcha. And then to that point, you and I talked about this earlier. Obviously, the Buehler campaign hit the ground, literally running or driving, if you want to put it that way, throughout the entire campaign. They wanted to go to every part of the state, and they did. How crucial do you think that was?
I think it was very important because Kate Brown hasn't done that, and so he established that he was willing to connect and bring, sort of close the urban-rural divide that we see politically in Oregon, and that's very, very important for a governor to reach out and connect with all parts of the state.
So how long do you think we're going to be here tonight? We're going to be waiting for all the results to come in, obviously.
Well, it depends on if there's any larger counties that have a lot of ballots to count and don't have the manpower to finish it, so it could be a while.
Bill Courier, thank you so much for stepping in here with us. I really appreciate it. He's a very popular man at this hour, so I'll let you go to the next interview. Again, I want to show you the stage behind me. It does look like at some point we are getting ready for some sort of speech or some sort of presentation from the Buehler campaign. We have not seen State Representative Knute Buehler tonight. We were told this entire time at the hotel he's been here with his family. We were also told that he was going to at some point make a speech. We assumed that was when the results were coming in, but that he also would not be answering questions from reporters tonight. So Bill Courier told me earlier tonight that they're optimistic. They're not putting much weight on the polls. They're really hoping for those undecided voters, those independent voters to come out strong. And as you heard, they want to wait until all of those smaller counties that he's visited so much throughout this campaign are counted before they sort of admit to any sort of results or sort of come to terms with how the night is shaping up. So we're going to stay here at the Sentinel Hotel in downtown Portland, bring you updates as they come. But for now, guys, back to you.
Thank you, Maggie. Back here with Len Bergstein, I'm Laurel Porter, and we are covering the midterms for you. What do you think of that? They're going to wait. They don't trust those numbers. They want to know where the votes have come in from.
Yeah, I feel for Bill Courier to be in this situation. I mean, these aren't poll results and whatever. We're waiting for undecided voters. These are kind of numbers that are being counted from the larger counties, and I think anybody who is looking at this realistically would have to say that these results are going to hold. The numbers may get closer and maybe a little more. He's got to worry, I think, about tomorrow and the job that he's got to try and put Humpty Dumpty back together again. He's got to figure out where the Republican Party stands and where it goes in terms of its message and its mission. Do they in fact surrender, like a lot of the rest of the country has, to Donald Trump and say, okay, this is the position we're going to take. It's going to be a hard edge, populist approach to all these issues, and
looks like we have Buehler here listening.
Oh, good.
We'll
Okay,
see
good.
what Knute Buehler has to say.
Oh, he has come in. Good. Okay.
Greatly appreciated. It's not the result that we all intended or wanted, certainly. And tonight, I have re-elected Governor Brown, and I offer her my sincere congratulations. No booze. And certainly, like each of you on staff, has been disappointed. It's been a long road. It's been a good road. A road that has allowed Patty and I to meet. So many of you who started out as strangers and now are family and close friends.
Apparently some audio difficulties there on the podium, so we're working on that, but it looks like he's conceding and saying it's been a long road and a disappointing result. Hopefully we'll get that audio fixed. What are you thinking, Len?
You are. It's really good.
What are you thinking about?
Well, we should talk about him. Oh, yeah, we should talk about how good a candidate he is. I know. I'm just saying this out loud. I think we ought to talk about how good a candidate he's been.
I think he has been a good candidate.
Yeah.
He's put up a tough race. He's gone from every to every end of the state. And so I'm sure this is really disheartening for him, his family, and all of his supporters. He was hoping, I think, to get more of the independents and unaffiliated voters to jump on the bandwagon. It certainly was challenging for him because he didn't really energize the Republicans who disagreed with a lot of his moderate positions.
And that's exactly right. He had a little bit of a problem trying to figure out where his constituency was. Everything he said that distanced himself from President Trump obviously ticked off the Republican base here, and so he had some problems. And then he had to kind of like tack back on the immigration issue or some of the other issues, and that kind of like put him further away from the progressive. So he had a very difficult time, I think, finding footing in the right constituency. Here's a guy who ran against Kate Brown, for Secretary of State, lost, could have gone back, made gazillion dollars and done other things, but he decided, I'm going to roll up my sleeves, become a state representative from Bend.
In kind of a liberal-leaning district.
Oh yeah, it's one of the most in the state, and he kind of, I think, made a really tremendous contribution on a number of policy issues, and then kind of decided that he was going to take another run at being the governor.
Voices who love Oregon.
Well, now we can hear him. Let's go back to Knute.
And believe that we can and must do a lot better than what we are right now. Voices who believe that Oregon kids deserve some of the best schools in the nation, not some of the worst. Voices who believe that our foster kids, families, and caseworkers need more support, that their voices need to be heard. They need care. Voices who feel strongly that a darn tent or a sidewalk should no longer be anyone's home. The problem with regards to homelessness has become a humanitarian crisis in the state. And voices that certainly in this state know that the current fiscal crisis and the pension problems and the classroom funding crisis creates a never-ending demand for higher and higher taxes that more and more Oregonians can't sustain. And voices who believe that all of Oregon, not just a single region, party, or ideology, should share in political decision-making and economic prosperity. Tonight, I lost an election, but I do think this competitive governor's race has made all of us better. That democracy has won. Competition is good for all of us. And we offered voters a choice, a stark choice, as I've said very many times. We offered ideas, real ideas. It's just not enough to say no about things or something is wrong. We also put forward serious policy proposals. And I hope my Democratic colleagues will look at that body of work and please steal shamelessly from it. There is good ideas there. Happy to help. And while victory was certainly our desired election outcome, it's my hope that what we've done here with this campaign will provide progress for Oregon. At the end of the day, that will be the final result. And as you can imagine, I have so many people to thank, but most importantly, the people who's standing around me. Owen. Hannah, and of course, Patty. Thank you for my family who stood by me, for my mom and dad raising me right, even though many times they didn't think they were doing such a good job. All the volunteers and donors who amplified my voice, raised my spirits during the hard days, and have made me much wiser for the experience. And a big thank you, of course, to the voters who I've earned their trust, and they did cast their lot for me tonight. Now, as I've told many of you, when I started this over a year ago, I burned every bridge in my personal career. I have no idea, truly no idea what the future holds for me.
I guess I'm pretty sure now I know that it starts with a vacation, but other than that, I've been blessed with a wonderful life, a great family, a wonderful career, many grateful patients, friends, and a time in public service that's been very fulfilling. I'm blessed to live in one of the world's most beautiful places and surrounded by some of the world's greatest people. Elections come and go, and I know we're all deeply disappointed with the results of this one. But your friendship and each other and the experiences we have are blessings that will truly endure for the test of time. So from the bottom of my
That was Knute Buehler, Representative Knute Buehler, the Republican candidate, giving his concession speech, clearly disheartened, but also saying that he hoped that some of the things that he talked about will be talked about by the Democrats in the legislature, like homelessness and PERS and other issues that he brought forward.
You know, I've been involved in campaigns, and I've lost a couple. I know this feeling that he's going through right now, losing a race that you put your heart and soul in is terrible. This is a moment, I think this is a kind of a team of rivals moment, perhaps. Maybe the governor, who's got a clear victory here, got nothing to worry about from any challenger. Perhaps this is a situation where she reaches out to a guy like a Knute Buehler and say, look, would you serve in some capacity? Maybe it's the PERS thing, maybe it's something else. Certainly she wants to keep him away from some of the issues that are really hot button issues for her, you know, kind of her core constituency, but trying to take a whack at solving PERS or something like that might be a place where she could put him to good use, show bipartisan right away, show dramatic leadership, and demonstrate to everybody, I'm in charge of this thing. The guy that I just went toe-to-toe with and beat, I want to bring him in to put him to work for Oregon. Again,
well, he'll still be in the legislature too, so it'll be interesting.
But he
won't be back.
Right, he couldn't run. So he's got some time on his hands, I think, after he takes his vacation. But you know, this team of rivals notion. Doris Kearns Goodwin kind of book about Abraham Lincoln taking the people who he competed with for the presidency to put them to work in his cabinet. There's a place for it in America, particularly in Oregon now.
Those Republican governors I was talking about earlier in the blue states of Massachusetts and Maryland have done just that, bringing Democrats on board. So it'll be interesting to see if she does that. Is Ron Wyden still speaking? We're going to go to Senator Ron Wyden speaking right now.
The message tonight is Oregonians want a check on these Trump abuses, and Kate Brown is going to give it to them. We can be especially proud that one of the first efforts she is going to champion is fighting dark money and eliminating the abuses of campaign finance. Energy, facts, and enthusiasm are why Governor Brown won tonight. And that's why Oregon is showing the national landscape that the Oregon way is a better way. That message is as clear as our beautiful Crater Lake. And now, to make sure that you get a sense of Oregon's team for you in Washington, D.C. and in Salem, I want to introduce to you my partner in the Senate, the conscience of America on immigration, Senator Jeff Merkley.
How about another round of applause for our senior senators and fighting for us forever, Senator Ron Wyden. Now I got to tell you, this is what democracy looks like right here in this belt right now. This is Oregonians fighting for we, the people, power. But you know what? We're not seeing that in Washington, D.C. We're seeing the Republican tax bill that took $1.5 trillion, took it out of the Treasury, gave it to the richest Americans. That's government by and for the powerful. Let's have government by and for the people here in the United States of America. And that means investing in families, in health care, and education, and living wage jobs, and housing. That's what we're fighting for here in Oregon. And let me tell you, we were very hopeful that tonight we could tell you all that Ron Wyden would be the next chair of the Finance Committee. Now, unfortunately, we're not able to make that announcement. And I know there's a lot of disappointment that we did not win the majority in the U.S. Senate. But I'll tell you this, we won 2/3 of the Senate races that are up tonight, and that's pretty powerful success for the blue team. Combine that with the House, and here's what you have. You have a foreshadowing of a massive blue tsunami in 2020. And that's when we're going to have Ron leading the country as chair of finance. So I've got to tell you that we are up against some very corrupt practices in the country. One of those is gerrymandering. We have to take it on. One of those is voter suppression. How about a new Voting Rights Act here in the United States of America? And one of those is dark money, dark, corrupt money. We need to end it. Now, while we're in all these fights, let's make sure we don't forget carbon pollution in the fight against climate chaos. Folks, I'm so excited that here in Oregon, our Governor Kate Brown, our Blue House, our Blue Senate are going to do a clean energy jobs bill here for the state of Oregon to take on climate chaos. So let's keep carrying that fight forward. Where goes Oregon? Let's take the nation, and then we will win these battles for the people. God bless you, and take care. Good night.
Well, you were listening to Senator Merkley and Senator Wyden, Democrats clearly jubilant about today and about Governor Kate Brown winning and taking the majority in the House. Let's revisit just a little bit about the majority in the House and Earl Blumenauer. What does that mean for him?
Ways and Means, significant position on Ways and Means. Earl's demonstrated, I think, tremendous leadership from the minority position, and I think he'll have even more say about the national agenda, at least in the House side, on Ways and Means Committee. DeFazio has been very active on infrastructure and transportation. As we know, when the Democrats were in charge, he'll have a kind of a critical role in that now. Suzanne Bonamici is a strong voice on education reform, and she's, I think, increased her kind of her power and confidence as just a great congresswoman. Kurt Schrader will have a kind of increasing role and has got a sensitivity about agriculture and a whole range of other issues that he's cared about that are kind of like moderating in our group. So I think we've got a group of people who will be kind of stepping up into kind of critical roles now as the Democrats take charge. So in that sense, it's a good move for Oregon. That part of the return is really good for Oregon.
Well, let's take a look at some of the measures and roll through some of these measures and see how they did. Yeah. We talked about how the grocery tax, Measure 103, that didn't pass. So that was the one that would have prevented any grocery taxes and would have actually changed the state constitution. So 58% no there. I don't think you were surprised.
It's a pretty resounding no. These guys came out of the blocks thinking that they were going to really kind of sweep this.
Yes,
right. Oh yeah, and a lot of money, obviously. You got big grocery, big beverage. You've got a group of folks who thought that they were going to be able to kind of like power through the yes vote on this, and the no vote did a great job. I thought their ads were pretty compelling, and they made the best use of their money. There obviously was this sugar tax thing behind the scenes here that obviously that was the reason the beverage guys were so interested. And we can talk about this later if we get into Washington State, but obviously there was a companion measure, if you will, and I think that's 1634. And I think that's passing on there's in Washington State. But anyway, so it was a kind of I think a major move by the progressive forces in the state to kind of say no to these narrow business interests.
You said there was a coalition that got together to try to get people to vote no on all these measures.
This is really an interesting group. Obviously, the Defend Oregon, and by the way, there's a kind of a sub-story to this. The woman who runs that organization, Becca Ubelo, did a great job at bringing together a very big table of folks to be able to kind of come to a decision. What were they going to support? How are they going to bring together a campaign effort on this whole thing? You want to break away to something?
Well, here's one of the ones. This is part of the coalition. They wanted to vote no on Measure 105. This is the one that would have repealed Oregon's sanctuary law that's been on the books for more than 3 decades. Resounding no on this.
That's got to be one of our proudest moments in Oregon, the message we send to the rest of the country. You know, this kind of stuff doesn't belong anywhere in the country, but it's not going to be in Oregon. So this group, this coalition said, how can we say yes to housing, the 102 issue, and say no to all these bad issues?
Let's go to Governor Brown.
Oh, good. Okay, super.
Her victory speech.
Terrific.
Didn't Jacob do a great job with that introduction? Let's give Jacob Burris a round of applause. I'm so delighted to be here with all of you tonight. I want to acknowledge a couple of people that I know that are here. Governor Barbara Roberts, where are you? I don't think I have to tell anybody that she was the first woman governor in this great state of Oregon. I like to say I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and I don't know if Governor Ted Kulongoski's here either, but let's give him a round of applause as well. So, everybody knows this is a school night, and there's a lot of kids behind me tonight. But I thought it was so important that they be here because this election was truly about Oregon's future, and this is what it looks like. And isn't it beautiful? All right. So, there is some good, there she is, Governor Barbara Roberts. Thank you. So, I think many of you know that I am literally one of 2 pro-choice women governors serving across the country. 2. But the good news is, with this election cycle, we tripled the number of Democratic women governors serving in this country. And we picked up key gubernatorial seats in Ohio, in Illinois, in Kansas, in Michigan, and New Mexico. Okay, and this is preliminary. Tony Evers is leading in the Wisconsin governor's race. And I think our congressional delegation will be here to make another announcement about the U.S. House, but I'll save that for them. But this election shows that when Oregonians are given an opportunity to invest in our classrooms, to build affordable housing, and to protect health care, it's not a toss-up. It's not even a close call. It's a slam dunk. election shows that when our values are on the ballot, Oregonians will come together and fight like hell to stand up for what we believe in. Tonight, we can say we fought to keep Oregon a welcoming and inclusive place for all. Tonight, we can say we fought to make sure that thousands more will have access to affordable housing, and we won. And tonight, we fought to make sure that every woman in this state, regardless of their income, regardless of their zip code, and regardless of their immigration status, will have access to the full complement of reproductive health services. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, you guys. But make no mistake, the fight isn't over. We've still got lots of work to do. We've never had someone so divisive in the White House, or someone with such less respect for the truth or for the people impacted by his decisions. And as we've learned from this election, Oregon isn't immune from these threats. We came close to losing the progress that we've worked so very hard for. Thanks to all of you and the voters of this great state, we're going to keep Oregon a shining beacon of hope. But we've got a few projects, you guys. No one person should be able to buy the governor's office. We need to fight for campaign finance reform, and I will lead that fight. Tonight, we've raised our voices in unison. We showed the world real Oregon values. Now it's time to put those values to work, improving the lives of hundreds of thousands of Oregonians. Together, we can ensure that every one of us has a warm, safe, dry, affordable place to call home. Working together, we can ensure that every one of us can have access to affordable health care. And we will continue to grow the economy in every single corner of the state. As my good friend Tom Chamberlain says, the best way out of poverty is a good paying job. I need your help. We're going to fight to ensure that every student has the tools they need to succeed. Are you ready to go to work? And we're going to fight to protect our air, our water, our pristine coastline, no matter what the federal government does. So, I want to say a thank you to many people, but first I want to thank my campaign manager, Andrea Cooper, for... She ran a campaign that inspired thousands of Oregonians to fight for the state that we all love. All right, I also want to thank every single volunteer who helped us knock on over 400,000 doors. You guys, that was in the last 10 days. That was in 10 days. We knocked on 400,000 doors. Every moment of your time made a difference. I have never in my time in Oregon politics seen the level of collaboration and the diversity of voices coming together to fight for the Oregon we know and we love. And I also want to thank my family, but most importantly, my husband, Dan. He is truly my sea of calm in an ocean of chaos. We are all here together tonight because we love Oregon. Yes. No matter who you voted for or where you live, we can all agree on one thing. Oregon is a very special place. I look forward to helping you celebrate tonight the things that make Oregon such a great place. And tomorrow, we're going to get to work and continue to build a better Oregon for everyone. Thank you all so very much. Thank you. Thank you.
You've been listening to Governor Kate Brown and her victory speech, clearly overjoyed by the victory, a slam dunk, she said, and also overjoyed by the results of the measures.
Yeah. Year of the Woman, here we are in Oregon, kind of electing a woman again, re-electing her to governor, and her turning around and reminding everybody that women not only were running for office here, but they also were running the races, so calling in Andrea Cooper. Andrea stands for a whole number of women who have really taken leadership roles in Oregon politics, whether it's the Emerge group that trains and recruits people like Jillian Schoen's organization, or whether it's people like Jenny Lee who have taken a lead in some of the kind of clean energy issues here.
Which passed, by the way.
Yeah, which is
business tax
and
for
that's
clean energy.
Really an interesting connection to JoAnn Hardesty, so that she kind of like both leads and kind of like surfs that wave of that progressives. But as women, I think one of the things that we're going to pull out of this race and think about over the next is are the women who have not only pushed and supported Kate Brown and obviously run and been elected, but also the women who have taken over basically the political machinery in the state on the progressive side and really led to victories that, as Kate said, knocked on 400,000 doors. That's it takes a lot of effort. It's a lot of effort, takes a lot of organizational effort, and I think the collaboration that she's talking about is recognized as a kind of a trait that women leaders have, be able to work well together. So there's a lot to unpack from that speech that has to do with that. Now, we talked a little bit about this. Governors are important in, they're not senators, they're not Congress people, and so on and so forth, but they're important for policy reasons, and she listed the policy issues she's going to take a whack at. So when we were talking about it earlier, she said, I've got a progressive agenda and I'm going to push it. So the legislature better buckle up, because she's going to come running at them. And then also they play an incredible role in politics. You've had a lot of them.
Redistricting.
Exactly. You've had those discussions at Straight Talk with her and with other folks. So it's the redistricting. It's kind of organizing people in a presidential race for 2020. So Kate will have a very preeminent role, not only in Oregon, but also amongst her colleagues as governors around the country. Now she'll be a seasoned leader, and she'll have a kind of a significant role, I think, in these next 4 years.
And not just here, but there were 285 women running for House seats and Senate seats. There were a dozen women running for 12 governor's offices. And not only the people who were running, but the turnout. It'll be interesting to see about the women voter turnout, what role women played in this election.
Well, that's right. And on top of that, you're exactly right. On top of that, the encouraging people to run who may never run before. There's a Native American woman who was running for governor in Idaho. I mean, all around us, what we saw was a changing of the guard and a really kind of a flushing through of people who didn't have a seat at the table before and now are running and kind of are encouraged by others. It's really pretty, it's an exciting time, I think, for all of us to kind of see this stuff. It's really a tale of really two elections. There's stuff going on with Trump and what he's doing to appeal to his, and then this thing that's going on in Oregon, I think that's really very exciting about this grassroots force. So it's, there's a lot to be optimistic about, even though, sometimes you look at the national scene and you get a little discouraged. There's a lot in Oregon to be
And she talked about campaign finance, that I think clearly is something that really concerns people after this election, seeing so many ads. And I was looking at the results of the Portland campaign finance measure, 26-200, and it looks like it's overwhelmingly yes, that people want to see campaign contribution limits. I think the Portland one limits it to about $500.
Right.
The issue will be whether something like that can stand up in court.
Right. There's obviously, we've talked about this, you and I, on air, the fact that Oregon's got such a strong support for First Amendment and the close connection between First Amendment and contributions and political speech and so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting. This is the second time that voters have overwhelmingly said, yes, we want this. So Kate Brown is kind of, I think, channeling a very important force. Now, you look back and you say, well, is she going to say to Bloomberg, don't give me money to fight the grocery
Because
tax?
she did have over $12 million in this race.
Right, exactly. And so, you got Phil Knight, who was clearly who she was calling out.
A single person to buy an election.
And that's again, you put a face on that problem, and then all of a sudden people start to resent the fact that one person can have quite that same power. But then you've got people like Bloomberg, you've got groups that have put in Emily's List, Planned Parenthood, people who put a lot of money in. So she's got to, I think, clearly articulate to people what she means when she said that there's a corrosive effect of money in politics, and clearly dark money that goes into a committee that never has to disclose where it's coming from, and then they can kind of
that one might be easier to get through the courts. I've heard the disclosure to let people know who's behind the money.
Right.
May be harder to limit the campaign contributions.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we talked about this again when you and I talked about it's a possibility that even in the Measure 200 that passed in the city, the court might say, okay, I'm going to let disclosure stand, but I'm not happy with the way this limits it. So it'll be interesting to
One of the measures we haven't looked at yet, if we could bring up Measure 106, that's the one that would restrict public funding for abortion, Measure 106, and that one went down. And I think you're not surprised by that. Overwhelmingly, 64% of people said, no, we want to protect abortion rights, women's reproductive rights in the state.
Good result, I think. I'm happy to support the result, and as you say, it's no surprise. We talked about it a lot. The interesting kind of, I think, sidelight is that why would you, if you were Knute Buehler or you were the Republicans, why would you let a ballot like this get on? You would talk, if these guys are your allies, the kind of the abortion forces are your allies on the Republican side.
Do you think they could have influenced that?
They could have said, let's wait for the presidential year. What are you going to do? You're just going to energize a whole pack of Democrats, of women who are going to come out, and if they come out, they're not going to vote for Knute Buehler and not going to vote for Republicans. I bet you this measure may have contributed in part to her success, and as we look around the state and we compare the numbers for 106 with maybe these really tight state legislative races, you may in fact see that the yes on 106 may have been the biggest contributor to the Democratic landslide.
Well, that is interesting insight. Let's go through some of the measures now, starting from the top. Measure 102 is the one that involves the amendment that would help the Metro housing one. That one passes. Let's look at Measure 103. And I'll let you look at some of these. I'm going to take a drink of water.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so this grocery tax, we talked about this, and the amount of money that was brought in, and really the issue behind the scenes was the whole question of the sugar tax. Perhaps a kind of a prohibition of grocery taxes would have also meant that you can't put any taxes on sugary drinks or what have you. So it was an attempt by the large groceries, restaurants, and some folks and the beverage industry to try and do a kind of a preemption so that they wouldn't be taxed. It's really kind of a residue of the fight. Residue of the fight over the last ballot as to whether large corporations should be taxed or not. So it was kind of a replay of that fight. 104 is a complicated issue. We had some people on the street saying they were kind of confused by this issue and so on and so forth. This was a measure to say, look, we're going to stop the Democrats from either taking away deductions and tax credits or raising any fees or things like maybe carbon taxes or whatever, unless they can get 3/5 of the vote to raise them. I think people just said, I don't understand this. I don't think it's a good idea. Not enshrine it in the Constitution. 105 is a sanctuary law. We talked about that. We really, it's such a good statement that we're not going to move in the direction of profiling that I think most Oregonians, after 63% of the vote, are delighted that we sent this signal out that this isn't the kind of thing that Oregonians are going to put up with. And the people who ran this campaign did a great job. Again, led by a woman, a young woman who really took this issue on and was really did a great job making it clear that this was an Oregon values issue. 26,199 again was the housing, affordable housing companion. I think this really is a tribute to, again, Nick Fish, who played a significant role in this, and Tom Hughes and Mayor Wheeler. Tom Hughes, by the way, is outgoing Metro, and we just should tip our hat to Tom Hughes. In the course of just his 2 terms in office as the head of Metro, he's given us a convention center and a huge housing bond. He's dramatically taken on a couple of legacy issues and brought them forward in a very positive way. Anyway, this issue, I think, puts Oregon on the road towards dealing with this affordable housing thing, and together with the 102 issue means that we'll get 7,500 units that will be able, families will be able to be taken care of. It's a very positive step, and I think Kate Brown presaged that she's going to build on this. Next one, 26. This is the campaign. Talking about this. And then,
wow, look at that.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, again, it's not actually. It is amazing. It's about the same way that the Multnomah County voters took it. So people love this idea, and the courts don't like it. So we got to kind of work our way through the kind of sorting through how we can kind of have some restrictions without doing anything that really runs afoul of the First Amendment.
And this is 26201, the one we were talking about, the Portland Clean Energy Fee, and this is really lopsided as well.
God, and we talked about this, and you and I agree that this is a game changer in terms of Portland's politics. Not only is it a step forward in carbon reduction and stuff, for all the reasons that Senator Merkley was talking about, but it puts money into the hands of low-income families, of communities of color. It was just a tremendous effort to kind of like get out in the community and say, look, let's put this money in the hands of the people who can use it the most, and let's take a whack at this climate thing. So I said this is going to, this and JoAnn Hardesty, I think the 2018 race will be looked upon as a watershed in terms of the way Portland politics are played. Let me just a minute more. I know we're going to break. When I grew up in politics in Portland in the 70s, the neighborhood movement just sprung up, okay? And so a lot of power moved from City Hall to the neighborhoods. As a result of that, we got McCall Park, we got rid of the Mount Hood Freeway, and a whole bunch of positive things happened in our city. This is going to have, I think, the same kind of impact for 50 years in terms of a positive direction for the city.
I know Val Jones from CNN was saying it was the most important initiative on any ballot anywhere in the country, that it's a real game changer. And this is where we saw change in Portland with City Council and with this clean energy business tax. Yeah. Is Congresswoman Bonamici still speaking from the 1st District? She wins her race. She was expected. Let's listen to whoops, she's wrapping up. Let's listen.
I know a lot of you here in this room not only worked on those victories for Oregon, but also made phone calls and sent text messages and worked on congressional races across the country. Thank you. You made a difference. I'm so happy for Oregon. so thrilled to be going back in the majority. Let's celebrate, and then let's do the work and take those values and bring them to D.C. and make a difference. Thank you again, Oregonians. Thank you.
Just a word about this. Just a word about it. Suzanne Bonamici is one of those elected officials who has grown tremendously in the role. People look up to her throughout the country on voice on education and other kinds of issues. She's someone who gets along well with all of her colleagues. She really focuses in on the hard work, does really the hard. She's a workhorse, not a show horse. She's a workhorse, and she gets stuff done even when she's in the minority. So this is going to be really nice for Oregon to have Suzanne in the majority now and to have a leadership position.
And this will be her first time, won't it, being in the majority? Since she's been in Congress, so that'll be really interesting. We want to take a look at the 3rd District in Washington, one we've talked about all night. It has not been called yet. This is the one between Jaime Herrera Butler and Carolyn Long. And Jaime Herrera Butler is out by a few percentage points, but they still haven't called this race. Here are the numbers now: 52% for Jaime Herrera Butler and Carolyn Long with 48%. And I don't think that Jaime Herrera Butler has ever been in the minority. So it'll be interesting if she's returned to the House. What will that be like for her in her district?
Yeah, it's interesting. They ran a little bit against Oregon and the tolls that Oregon wants to put on, but that she kind of made that
and she says
issue.
No light rail on any bridge.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So she won't have quite as big a megaphone as she had when she was in the majority, but clearly the national pundits all looked at this district and said, this is the kind of district that compares with others around the country that could be in play here in a blue wave. There was, in the case of Carolyn Long, she ran a great race coming out of nowhere, right? And made a very competitive race out of someone who's well known and well thought of, obviously, in her district. So kudos to Carolyn Long for running a great race. Not that it's over yet or anything, but she ran a great race, and to Herrera Butler for being able to kind of, in the face of this push and the Democrats taking over the Congress, for her to withstand that.
And she also distanced herself from President Trump. Thanks. She wrote in Paul Ryan, and she stood up to him on drilling offshore. Right. She stood up to him on the Affordable Care Act when the Republicans passed it in the House. She voted against it because she didn't feel there was an adequate replacement. Of course, Senator McCain was that vote that brought it down in the Senate. So she really tried to keep her distance and say that she represents her district.
Yeah, if there's anybody that should be concerned about pre-existing conditions, is her. It's her own narrative, her own family. You've talked with her a bunch of times, and I think on Straight Talk, and so I think she feels the issue, and she, I think she was vulnerable on that issue, as were all Republicans, but she was able to survive. So, and that's the way sometimes elections bounce.
Let's talk about the lone Republican in Oregon's congressional delegation. Do we have numbers on Congressman Greg Walden in his district and over in Eastern Oregon and in Hood River? 56% to 40%. Jamie McLeod-Skinner, we had her on Straight Talk, a Democrat. She put up a great campaign. She traveled all over the district, meeting with people, putting up campaign signs. She always wanted a debate with Greg Walden, but he never was willing to debate with her. But he wins handily there.
Well, I think there'll be some people who say 40% is a victory. I mean, it's tough to take on Greg Walden. He is really well liked. He's been a long-term elected. He knows the district well, serves it pretty well. So 40% may in fact be the kind of thing. I'm sure there are going to be people when we talk with Jaime tomorrow and say, one time doesn't make your whole career. You got to go back at it again. 40% is a good place to crack through.
She seems like a great candidate.
Yeah, and again, Greg will be a different person now. He'll be out of leadership. He was very much in the leadership.
On the Affordable Care, which was the Affordable Care Act was a vulnerability for him.
So we get to see a different Greg Walden. He's done some things together with Earl Blumenauer, so he's got some. He's not going to be without his means of kind of serving the district and doing a good job. But we'll see how he does in the minority, and then in a presidential year, where the numbers will be very large in terms of turnout. Someone like a Jaime McLeod-Skinner could, in fact, make another run and put the district in play. He's about as good a kind of a congressman as there is in the West. I mean, he just understands his district really well, and so he'll be a tough guy to take on, but it's not impossible in 2 years.
Well, to wrap things up, I think things went just about the way you thought they would with Governor Kate Brown going back and all those measures failing except for Measure 102 and then getting the clean energy tax and the Metro affordable housing. So appreciate you being here with us tonight.
We guessed a lot of things pretty well, didn't we?
So thank you so much for joining us here on KGW.com and the KGW Facebook page. We'll have complete coverage and a wrap-up for you coming up on KGW News. Oh, hold that thought, everybody. I'm going to pull you back in because we got to listen right now to Jaime Herrera Butler. Let's listen to what she has to say.
Aisle to the benefit of the folks here, and I'm going to continue that trek. You know, the economy is in so much better of a place today than it was when I first took office. I want to continue that trend. I want to protect those jobs. I want to be we're looking to work with anybody who has that same focus, and I have a lot of those strong relationships. So, you know, I think obviously things are going to change in D.C., but I'm still the same representative who's going to fight for the interests of folks here in Southwest Washington.
Yeah, here during this campaign, I know there's been a lot of talk about the debates, you know, especially in Vancouver, the lack of debates in Vancouver and more in rural areas. Looking back, do you can you kind of talk a little bit about why you chose not to debate Carolyn Long?
Well, let me set the record straight. Actually, I did 4 debates with her, and 2 of them were based here. They're online. They were, I think my first one was 2 hours with the Columbian Ed Board. That's all online. And you know, I think we went through every issue we could pop, from impeachment to the economy to taxes, and there are very few issues that we didn't touch on. And so I think all 4 of those debates have been made available in public, and people have seen them. What I think is important to recognize is I was outspent by well over $1 million, right? And yet people still stepped forward and thought, okay, maybe we should, you know, people question that. And so I think, you know, one of the things my opponent has said is, it's easy to be bipartisan on local issues. And she kind of said it in a dismissive way. And in my mind, I thought, that's exactly who I want to be. I want to be that representative that people think she's going to get something done regardless of who's in charge. And I think that's what resonates with folks here. I mean, they can, political showmanship is very, right, it's been everywhere in this cycle. I mean, my opponent's done a ton of rallies, right? And I think that's where she put her stock. And you know, I thought I'm going to continue to operate the way I have, which is focusing on those local issues. And right now it feels like that's where people wanted me to be and wanted me to focus on.
At any point here over the past few days, were you nervous about how the polling was coming in and all of that?
Of course. Of course. This is a swing seat. This is not a Republican seat. This wasn't my seat. But it wasn't my opponent's either, and I have had that in my mind. This could go whatever direction. I think people here, what they care about is, are you one of us? Are you going to fight for us? And can we trust you? They have given me a lot of latitude. There have been a number of issues that I don't agree with a good number of the electorate here on, but they've seen me fighting on their behalf. And I think I never felt like, oh, this is my seat. It is an honor and a privilege to get to do this. And it looks like I might get another shot. I'm optimistic, but, you know, we'll see. We'll see.
What did you think about the tone of a lot of the ads in this race? I know a lot of outside money came in, and when that happens, you lose control over some of the ads. And so what are your thoughts? It was pretty negative.
You know, honestly, I was taken, I think, taken a lot more in by what was happening in the gubernatorial race in Oregon. I don't know, that to me took up most of my airwaves. I do think, here's the reality though, it does matter who's in this seat. You know, the folks here, they don't want a government-run single-payer healthcare policy. We have the best jobs market we've had in 10 years. We were double-digit unemployed in every single county up by 5. And today, we're at 4.5% and 5.5%. They want, it matters. And a big part of that is because we passed a bill that's really set free the economy, right? And my opponent has pledged to repeal that. So it did matter. People did need to know the distinction. And I'm not afraid of the truth. I think the truth is one of those things that can't be bottled up no matter how much money's coming in from whatever side, from whatever team. And you know, this isn't something you do because you want. I don't get into politics if you need your ego stroked or if you have thin skin, right? Because this is something that's not about me. It's about the people here and their livelihoods and opportunity, and can they continue to raise their family, choose their job. choose their health care, afford their health care. These are real life issues. And so, yeah, ads are going to talk about those real life issues. And, you know, I think it's one of those things people aren't dumb. They're going to be able to see through the garbage. All right.
Okay.
I see the cameramen all shaking their heads, yes. I think we're good.
And you were listening to Representative Jaime Herrera Butler in the 3rd District in Southwest Washington. I don't think that race has been called, but she was talking about, looks like she's ahead, that if she goes back to the House as part of the minority party, what she would do, she'd be working across party lines. So we want to wrap it up now with Len Bergstein. I'm Laurel Porter. Thank you for watching here on KGW.com and on our Facebook page. We're going to continue streaming national coverage for you, so don't go away. Join us at 11 o'clock on KGW for complete coverage of midterm election 2018. Have a great night.
Said to people, it is not 100% of the vote counted yet, and they believe that the votes that are still left to be counted will fall in the Democratic column, and that means that there's still hope for Stacey Abrams. This crowd erupted with a cheer when they heard that noise. They are still standing shoulder to shoulder in this room, very much hopeful, very much optimistic that they might be able to pull this thing out and bring it to a runoff. So they're standing tall. They were told, don't leave, don't go away, continue to stay in the room and be hopeful for Stacey Abrams. Lester?
Yeah, we're looking at how close those numbers are. Rahena Ellis, thanks very much. Why is the count taking so long?
So look, we're estimating, we think there's still a statistical chance he can drop below 50, which is why we haven't called it. It's very tight. We don't know how many provisionals there are. Until we know that, then we'll feel better about this, about which way to go.
In a larger sense, this election has been very important because of the people that it has brought into the process.
It absolutely has been a high turnout election. We're going to take a moment right here. We want to pause. We're going to let other stations join us right here at NBC.
From KGW News, this is Decision 2018, Election Night.
We need these midterms to be exciting, and here we are in the thick of it. Good evening. I'm Dan Haggerty. Thanks so much for being with us. Governor Kate Brown will, in fact, get 4 more years in office. Excuse me. I'm excited about it. Can barely